Well, we've seen a seismic shift at a lot of the Six Flags parks. For example, a lot of entertainment cut, and you'd think it would be a chain wide thing, but now we're seeing that maybe it's not. King's Dominion recently announced a pretty wide array of new entertainment offerings that Kings Island simply isn't offering. Why is that? Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Suhr, and this is Tower Topics.
New episodes of Tower Topics, they drop 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So you can listen wherever you get your podcast, and you can watch on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. So Ryan, you hit it on the head there about King's Dominion. They just rolled out their summer 2026 entertainment lineup. This isn't just adding a show or two, like we've seen at Kings Island. I mean, this is a full-on strategic shift for King's Dominion.
Yeah, it's very much so. Now, King's Dominion, I always felt like was always more of a entertainment park than Kings Island is a rides park. And I know that there's a lot of debate in that, but that's just been my experience. But what's funny about this is you can't say that Kings Island got Phantom Theater, so that's where the money went, because these guys got Raptera last year. And Raptera is most certainly, that's the new ride for this year too. It's definitely, from a business standpoint, being amortized this year too. So this was the blatant decision that entertainment was needed in the park. And just to go down the list of what they are adding, it's pretty substantial. So they got live music happening daily across the park, roaming performers creating energy in the midways, full-scale drone and fireworks spectacular anchoring the night. We'll get to that. They had a little bit of a laughable moment a couple years ago with that. Cirque Imagine, which if you're a Kings Island fan, you should recognize that. Percussion show embedded into Jungle Expedition. The water parade that doubles as an interactive guest experience. Bands and residents playing multiple sets per day. And legacy acts like the clown band roaming and connecting with guests. And what we don't have on the list is the resident singing mushrooms, which are an entertainment venue in itself.
They are. And Ryan, I mean, this isn't something that is random. This is intentional. King's Dominion isn't treating entertainment as a filler between rides. They're looking at this, treating this as a reason to visit, and a lot of this stems from a couple of months ago. They had kind of like a little roundtable discussion. They brought in some longtime Kings Dominion guests. The CEO, John Riley, sat down with them, and they kind of talked about the things that were missing at Kings Dominion, things they could bring back, things that could make a difference. And, this is kind of a strategy at play here, based off of that discussion that they had of, what guests wanted to see. And it's really good to see that Six Flags, John Riley, that they listen. And they reacted quickly. It wasn't something, well, we can wait till next year. We're already budgeted for this show, so wait till. No, they went ahead and did it now. And it shows, for all those that were thinking, they didn't get a park president, they're getting ready to sell the park, they want to dump it. No, this shows that they are committed to Kings Dominion. They do want to make a go of it, and they're putting in a big time effort here with the entertainment lineup.
See, I think that there's definitely a case for what you're saying, but I could also see this being evident for they're trying to prove something so they can sell it. I definitely see both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you'd have to look at is sometimes, when you're trying to sell something, you want to beef it up a little bit. But for the most part, when you're trying to move something, you kind of bare bones it. You kind of try to make it as little overhead as possible, for a potential buyer. And that's not what's happened right here. I mean, this has added a lot more, overhead to it, bringing in all the entertainers, having to have more, supervisors, managers and stuff for entertainment to be involved with this. It's, when you look at this, it's tapping into 3 different, key ideas here, Ryan. It's, first, capacity distribution. Entertainment pulls people off the ride queues. Spreads crowds across the park. You want to see that happening at any park that you go to. Second, it's a multi-generational appeal. Not everyone in a group, when you go to a park, your family wants to marathon roller coasters. Shows give families a shared experience, so I think that's important. And third, And what I think is probably the most important, piece of this is the revisit value. You can ride a coaster 100 times, but a rotating entertainment lineup that gives guests a reason to come back, the next weekend during the week, more so than a roller. Now, there's going to be some that won't believe that that happens more in a roller coaster, but I can tell you from my own experience in the 1980s and early 90s at Kings Island that the entertainment lineup led to a lot more revisits than the roller coasters did.
I mean, I think a lot of this comes down to if this is going to be successful, then it's going to be because they're promoting it properly. They got the social media and the PR behind. Like, oh, I'm pretty sure Cirque Imagine was there, and people probably are nostalgic for it. So they need to get the word out, and I think people will visit specifically to see it. Now, I will say that King's Dominion has always wanted to be bigger than the box that they put them in. And a perfect example, I mentioned the fireworks. They really wanted to do fireworks. It's like 5 years ago or so. The problem was they wouldn't give them the budget to close later than like 7 o'clock. So they did fireworks anyway with a bright blue sky in the background. I'll insert the footage here if I can find some online, but that was a little embarrassing, but they did it.
It was. It was something that I know. I was working at Kings Island at the time. We were like, why would they do fireworks at 7 o'clock at night? Well, that's when they were closing,
Mhm.
but it just made no sense.
Yeah, it looks like I just kind of clicked through their calendar. It looks like most nights they close at 9, which in Richmond it would be dark at 9. So
Hmm.
uh, fireworks and drones should be okay then. Um,
Yeah, and as I read the press release, Ryan, that they had distributed, wasn't sent to me, but everybody copied and pasted it throughout every coaster club, you
mm,
know, Facebook group that was out there. That wasn't easy, hard to find the press release that they sent out, but it kind of reminded me of the kind of thinking that Dollywood does so well, with the entertainment
mm,
and the reason that you'd want to come visit, with the lineup that they're putting out there. The roaming entertainment, the clown band, very popular at Kings Island, which to this day I am shocked that Kings Island still doesn't do the clown band because it was immensely popular in the 70s and the 80s. They brought it back for a brief time. Later it was around for a little bit during the 50th anniversary in 2022 for a very short run, but it works, and it's that surprising delight that you're just sitting there on International Street and all of a sudden here comes the clown band. You weren't expecting that, but you're entertained. So that's the kind of thinking, that Dollywood does so well. And I'm glad to see that, King's Dominion has kind of turned to this playbook. After listening to their guests, let's make sure that that's very important.
mhm.
We stress that this was derived from meeting with those that are big fans of King's Dominion, some of their most loyal fans. And it wasn't just, something that they did for show, that there was action based on those conversations. And they moved quickly, so I love to see that.
Yeah, and it's funny. We've always talked about the issue that Kings Island has with dipping their toe into stuff. Food and wine is a perfect example, but this is not. This is
Mhm.
diving in, and this is putting a lot of your eggs into the basket of the entertainment because they probably spent as much in entertainment as they would like a moderate sized installation for a ride. You know, so it is a
Yeah,
gamble.
exactly. And it was a big thing, just like Kings Island in the 70s and 80s, entertainment was a big piece of it. It was part of their marketing budget in terms of, the media spend, for TV commercials, print ads, was to come see these shows.
Hmm.
They were marketing the shows as much as they were the rides back then, both parks. So it's kind of a, turning back in time, to what King's Dominion was known for, from its debut in the mid 70s through the 80s. And that was the entertainment lineup, which often mirrored the Kings Island lineup. A lot of times after Kings Island would have a show like Gotta Dance, it would move on to King's Dominion,
Hmm.
and vice versa. And that's so, and it's like a dark theater is never good to see. And in my visits to King's Dominion in recent years, you'd go by the King's Dominion Theater and it was dark,
Yeah, all season.
so all season. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that was always hard to see. And some of the other stages at King's Dominion, were dark. The bandstand was dark by the Eiffel Tower that they had there. So that was kind of, difficult, for me to see after experiencing the park in the 1980s many times and enjoying a lot of shows throughout the park. So I'm glad that they're bringing it back. And, there are a lot of guests that they're not going to ride Rapterra, but they'll certainly come visit the park if they have a full day of entertainment to watch.
Yeah, and that's where it comes down to positioning. Like I said, they need to have the support of social media and PR behind them. Because again, I've said this 1,000 times, and I said it probably 100 times in the food and wine thing. The last thing you want is somebody that was going to walk into those gates anyway, be like, "Oh, the Cirque show's back. I guess we'll go see that." You want people to walk in
Yeah,
that
you want
gate
to.
for that reason.
Yeah, exactly for that reason, and that was immensely popular
Mhm.
when they had Cirque Imagine there at King's Dominion. Um, After it was at Kings Island, it went there, and they had a number of the performers that were in the shows at Kings Island were doing it there, and guests loved it.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe King's Dominion's fallen off the horse a little bit, with the merger. Like nothing's really been the same. But last time I was at King's Dominion was like probably 2018 or so, and the entertainment that they had was world class. Working for Rosie's, setting up the fireworks on the Eiffel Tower. I saw their bandstand show, all 4 or 5 shows of it. And it really was fantastic and unique and exciting. And people got into it. And I haven't been there since then, but you have. And you mentioned, the experience that a lot of people actually, I have been there since 2018, but I remember being excited about the shows and seeing that the King's Dominion Theater was closed for the whole season and so on. And it's been a story of surrender since the beginning with that. They had that great, Dennis Spiegel will tell you, they had to close the gates before the park even opened on opening day because the demand was so high. But they've effectively surrendered to, the SeaWorld parks, to Busch Gardens since the beginning. This was supposed to be the bigger, better Kings Island in a better market and a better location. There were a
Mhm.
couple stumbles along the way. And again, Spiegel will tell you what they are as far as the orientation of the park and how it's laid out and stuff. But I think that the fact that it's very much back burner is evident, and anybody that lives, south of King's Dominion will probably prefer to go to Busch Gardens.
Yeah, they were going to put a ride at King's Dominion in 1978 that would have kind of risen above the trees that
Mm,
you would have seen from the expressway. Wasn't a coaster, but it still would have been a ride that would have made everybody look, and we got to go try to ride that. Um, but they got cold feet when they looked at what it was going to cost, and it wasn't. Not talking like millions. Okay, this was a high six figure ride, not in the millions.
in
And
$1978 or like in today dollars?
1978 dollars, which was still very reasonable.
Mhm.
So they decided not to do it, and then a couple weeks later, Busch Gardens announces they're doing um, at that, or what's still there, right now, Loch Ness Monster,
Mhm.
and that took the industry by storm, and that's when it really took a turn that King's Dominion never recovered from. Because up to that point, they were outdrawing Busch Gardens those first few years, going head to head. They were the better draw. But then Busch Gardens puts in this, signature attraction that gets attention around, not only the country, but pretty much the world, Loch Ness Monster. It's still there today. And King's Dominion has always played second fiddle to Busch Gardens ever since.
Yeah. And again, it's been a story of surrender. It's been the story of that park from the beginning. And hopefully this means that they've turned a corner and, if they're not going to be, I mean, to change the park in a manner in which is immersive as Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, or whatever, that would be quite a feat. But they can compete with them on a level where they're able to, and I think this is a good example.
Yeah, they can, and they've got really good hardware at King's Dominion. I mean, look at their ride lineup. Flat rides, is a better lineup than I think Kings Island has. When you're looking at all the flat rides that Kings Dominion has, coaster wise, they've got some really good ones. Racer 75, it's very comparable to the Racer at Kings Island. The Grizzly, after the track work, especially, that's now probably a top 15 on most people's list for wooden roller coasters. Rapterra, they've got that, the wing coaster. They've got Dominator, an older ride but came from Jaga Lake. That's a fantastic steel coaster. So they've got a carousel. It's over 100 years old. So they've got a lot of history there. Ferris wheel even, which came from Jaga Lake. So they have so much history and tradition, a really solid ride lineup, and now that you're adding this entertainment, they've made themselves a place to visit this summer with what they've done with the entertainment lineup.
So we've kind of expressed, we've litigated why this is a good move, why this is positive, how to make it successful. Why is Kings Island doing, a 3-week residency for Brad Ross, and like what's the difference? Where's the disconnect there?
It's a great question. If King's Dominion can do this, why isn't Kings Island? Kings Island again, was really as known for its shows as its rides in the 70s and the 80s going into the 90s. This is a park, Kings Island, that has a massive local season pass base. They get strong attendance, and maybe that's part of the problem, that they're looking at this. You've got people with the mindset that, well, they're going to come anyway.
Mhm.
Why should we do it? We can have the theaters dark. They're still going to come. We don't have to have all of our coasters ready to run opening weekend. People are going to come anyway. We can just run one train on each side of the racer for the first few weekends. People are going to come anyway. So it's got that mentality, that they're still going to come. But that history of entertainment, I'm one of those people that remembers when it was a bigger part of the experience. But yet in recent years, Kings Island, it's felt like they've really scaled back in that area, less prominent, less of a draw. You're not seeing that daytime entertainment lineup across multiple areas throughout the season. Uh, the park continues to lean heavily on its ride lineup, which is great, but it's only part of the equation, and they're leaving a lot of guests out who don't come for the rides. There's nothing for them to do. And I've was there season pass preview day and ran into a couple of longtime season pass holders, and they go for the shows, and there was absolutely nothing for them to do. So they were just lamenting that when I ran into them in the sweet spot, that there's nothing for us to do. This isn't fun. And when they do have shows, they're only here for a couple of weeks. So uh, the guests have definitely noticed. And but it's not about shows. It's about positioning. When a park like Kings Dominion says entertainment is embedded into the heartbeat of the park, that's a signal. It's saying we're not just a collection of rides. We're a full day, full experience destination. And there's a lot of the season at Kings Island that they can't say that anymore. When guests are choosing between parks, weekend trips, entertainment dollars, I think that matters, especially when you consider that Kings Island, they share a regional ecosystem with parks like Dollywood, where entertainment is king. Guests have options, and parks need more than roller coasters to stand out.
Yeah, you won't see an argument from me, and I will tell you that I wouldn't really say case studies. It's more like watching YouTube videos, but watching the history of all these brands where they were so strong, and then all of a sudden they weren't. I think that once there's something that kind of it is taken for granted, like, oh, they'll come anyway. One day they won't, and then they'll be left struggling. Kings Island, from all accounts that we've heard, is a park that performs, um, but at the same time, there's a lot of other competition, not necessarily theme parks, but other entertainment venues that would love to have your business, where they're going to do what they can to draw you away. So, I mean, we'll see how many $100, $200 season passes they've sold and what kind of impact it has. But at the same time, to actually visit, it's gonna take more than taking a ride on Diamondback, and like Phantom Theater. I really think draws. I think that it does sell tickets. I've got people that haven't visited the park in a couple of years texting me like, I want to go up there and ride that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but
that's
that's
definitely
an
something that's going to draw.
but that's an like kind of a testimony for investing in the park. You know, so we'll see what happens. I don't foresee anything like this happening at Kings Island necessarily, unless people kind of speak up about it. But maybe we'll prove them right in the whole, like, hey, they'll show up anyway, and we won't see any kind of improvement. But
Now, I've had some people that when they've heard me talk about the lack of entertainment at Kings Island, say, well, that's because you've gotten old. You don't ride roller coasters as much as you used to, and that's wrong, because the days that I was riding roller coasters a lot, more than anybody in the world at that time at Kings Island in the 1980s, the live entertainment lineup was just as important to me as riding the Racer and riding the Beast. Shows like Gotta Dance, I would see that over 100 times during the season. In Concert 84, in Concert 85, in the International Showplace Theater. I was watching that over 100 times. The Bandstand show at night. I would watch a show. They had 4 different shows that would go there. I would watch the one that would come on right around 6:15, 6:30 range, and then I would watch another one after my last rides on the Racer or the Beast at 9:30. I'd watch the last show, get a blue ice cream, sit down and watch the show. So entertainment has always been for me since my first ever visit, when my mom made me watch shows. If you want to go ride the Racer, you want to go ride the Enchanted Voyage, you want to ride the log flume, well, you're going to watch these shows with me, because that's why she was going to the park. So since 1972, it's always been ingrained in me that entertainment was a big part of the fabric of the Kings Island experience. But now that's not much of the experience anymore, because it's just not the offerings that there were before. It's only, parts of the season that you can watch shows. It's not anymore from the opening in April all the way through Labor Day that there's live entertainment. So
Yeah.
I think, if I think when we have to ask Kings Island, what's the hesitation on this? Is it budget? Is it strategy? Is it they're going to come anyway? Um, that they don't need to change anything that they do, resting on their laurels because they're going to show up anyway. I don't know. But I'd like to see more live entertainment. I'd like to see them do what King's Dominion is doing. And, I'm very much interested in going to King's Dominion this summer to check out the live entertainment lineup.
I wouldn't mind seeing Cirque Imagine again, to be honest with you. Now, before we move on, I do want to kind of make a point, because you said, like, well, people said maybe you're getting old or whatever. It's like, well, Kings Island's a family park. Isn't that, like, don't you think that people over 60, people over 50 would be a demographic that they'd want to bring in? Don't you think that that would be a gaping hole and an opportunity if they didn't have people that age coming? Especially, like, if it's a family of 4, it's a family park. Okay, cool. Let's play with that. Well, should we bring grandma along? No, there's nothing for grandma to do. That's the problem, and that's why they don't experience the growth that they probably need to. But I digress. Don, we're here to wish Flight of Fear a happy 30th anniversary. 30th.
That's right. Yeah, Flight of Fear at Kings Island and Kings Dominion both turning 30 this year. You do see, some new shirts that they have recognizing that in the gift shops. I think that's great. But you have to ask the question, where's the marketing for the 30th? Besides the merchandise, there's no blog telling the story behind the ride. There's no social post telling a story how the ride came to be, how a local theater designer helped bring Kings Island's dark sci-fi roller coaster to life, back in 1996. I think that would be a good story angle, for them to do on the Kings Island blog, integrate that onto the social channels. I think guests would, really enjoy that, especially those that really enjoy Flight of Fear. But it's much like the Grand Carousel. We don't see much about it that recognizes that it's the 30th anniversary, but it's not that hard to find people that were involved in that project, bringing it to life, to do these stories, take guests behind the scenes. How did this ride come to be? And I think that's something that that's lacking, from the marketing, PR, social media piece of this, is that there's just nothing there. You can go into the store, buy the 30th anniversary shirt. That's great. But there's an opportunity here that so far they've let slip by.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to some YouTube comments. But before that, let's thank our Prestige members. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Grau, Gibson Hills, Connor Wheeler, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Miku, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster, Guys and Girls, Justin Y, Mike Garrett, Galaxy B-Boy, Greggy Rocks, Kayla La, T Cleveland, Tim Dwelly, Sun Fun Sarah, and Ian Ross. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers even get a free t-shirt. So hit that link if you want to support Tower Topics in the best way possible, starting at just $2.99 per month. All right, Don. So we people left some really good comments for this series of recordings we do. Here's the first one. Okay, this is about the rethinking the drink cup, and this is from the Bobcat 1978. Said my wife and I were talking about this, but what if there was an option where you could just bring your own cup? You could add that option to your season pass, so you can just scan and go. So I'm trying to, as far as like, what's the difference between this and a souvenir bottle? The reason why I don't want a souvenir bottle is because it's big and bulky and I have to carry it around. But there are a bunch of options for like cups that are kind of like fold into bags or kind of like accordion down and stuff. I think that's a really cool idea. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I like the idea of it. I mean, you're scanning the same. You can't cheat the system and scan any more than you're able to. I think that's something that's worth, looking into about it. As long as people aren't bringing these gigantic jugs, but within reason in terms of the ounces and that, I think there shouldn't be anything really stopping you from doing that. As long as you can just scan and go. Now, I think one of the things that I say where it was on a timer, would control how much you can put in your own bottles that you bring.
Right.
So someone's not bringing a gallon thing of, they used to have milk in and just, filling that up with soft drinks or, or Powerade for the day, kind of a thing. I think you can control it that way, by having a timer, set on it. But if they were to do that, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to bring your own cup. It's saving the park money, if you do it that way.
Saving the environment, it's saving the park money.
Saving everything, yeah.
I like this. I like this idea because like that makes it for innovation. And you're right. Like, they get the free slushy day at or free Slurpee day, I guess it would be, to get the copyrights correct, from 7-Eleven. And people were filling up like trash cans and stuff. And then it's like, okay, 96 ounces is the highest it can go. But with this, like, you're right. It's on a timer. It knows how much it puts out. I mean, in restaurants, if you go to McDonald's drive-through, like the machine knows if you're doing a medium Coke and it will fill a medium Coke. It'll do 20 ounces. So make it so it limits to 20, 24 ounces, whatever. And then I think it's a good idea.
I do too. The other thing about that, in terms of what like Dollywood, Kennywood does, and we were talking about the drink plans, one of the complaints, and people say they're always out of ice at Kings Island because everyone just dumps their ice. Well, they dump their ice because they go to put the product in and it's not there.
Absolutely.
So that's why they're dumping their ice. So if it was in a controlled situation and they were on top of it and everything had product, you wouldn't see that happening with the ice.
I agree. I mean, I can't tell you how many times when, I've chosen Coke Zero and it looked like Sprite because it was clear, but you're right. Or there's the other thing of, I don't know if this is a Kings Island thing or a machine thing, but you go to get ice and it gives you like the full Antarctic, you're like, your arm is covered in ice and stuff. And you've
it just comes from, yeah.
So that is a problem. And that might not be something that's super controllable, but I think that what you're saying is absolutely correct. If Coke and Diet Coke don't work, that's probably 70% of your business at those machines. So people are going to dump them if they don't get them. But but that's a good comment. I appreciate you leaving that. I'm Ryan. That's Don. This is Tower Topics.